Morning. Today is the 12th of Nisan, the 13th of April. It's a Wednesday, and we are once again gathered to study the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. And at the moment, we are studying Masechet Shabbat, chapter 15, page Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. That would be 113b. And we are talking about Shabbos. And we spoke about yesterday appropriate Shabbos talk, appropriate Shabbos walk. And it all was introduced because we were talking about appropriate Shabbos clothing. And although we haven't yet gotten into the specifics of the wardrobe, what's clear is that there is a special type of clothing to wear. We spoke about how a person might want to have their cloak, their robe, take on a flowing style and nature, representative of those carefree people who don't have to worry about getting their clothing dirty because they don't. There's other people that can do the dirty work for them. We closed down and we actually stopped in middle of a discussion about how to walk. What is a inappropriate? This was all based on a reading on a verse in Isaiah, that talks about how to honor the necessity of honoring. Here, Professor, you're saying something because you're muted.
Yes. The other people, do we have an indication who those other people are? Are they women, wives, sisters, daughters, or are they Gentiles who are hired to do the laundry, or it's just left unspecified?
You're asking who the well-to-do people with long flowing clothing, who does their work?
Right.
It's not specified. It's not specified. My imagination tells me we're talking more about people who can sit in an office and work and manage their investments, if you will, or do the kinds of work which don't necessitate manual labor. And so today, you could hypothetically be a freshly out of school and be an accountant and, still be, struggling to pay your Manhattan rents, let's say, or Brickell rent. But in those days, if you could afford to avoid the kind of manual labor, farming and bricklaying, you were already considered from the upper echelons of society. And I suspect that's what we're describing.
No, my question wasn't who are those people who could afford those flowing clothes. My question was who serves them. Does the Talmud assume that it's their wife who is that other person who does the laundry, or does it mean that it's a Gentile servant, or what is the society point of view on this? Or it's just others and we don't care who they are?
In this text, there is no reference to who might be doing the labor. That is a curious question of, if a guy has his wife doing that, is that considered affluence, or is that not, or does that mean that they are still dependent on their manual labor and they're not truly the kind of people that have a whole staff doing the work? I suppose this was probably not exclusively a Jewish matter. I suppose this was a general societal matter. Most people were bricklayers and farmers and schlepping, and they had to, but I don't think it's an interesting question. I don't believe in this Gemara or in this discussion there's any reference to who might be the one doing all the labor.
Rabbi,
yes.
when it comes, go ahead, Bernie. You're the Levi. You go first.
Yeah, it's okay. What just popped into my head is sort of related to this, about Jews versus non-Jews doing work for Jews on Pesach, and it came into my head because when I was in high school, I used to work in a hotel in Muncie, Rubenfeld's Muncie Park Hotel. So the question always was whether or not, what are you supposed to do about the Seder? And you're leaving your family. Why don't they just have Goyim? And as I'm just thinking, whether it's a Chabad Seder or this Seder, the idea of hiring Jews, it's a double-edged, you want them to make a living, but you're taking them away from maybe something that that's an important. It's an important issue that just popped in.
Sometimes I wonder myself. I obviously observe the Seder when I run a Seder, but
right.
I don't. but I don't have the opportunity to have a family Seder the way I actually would ideally do it. And so it is an interesting question. But no, your question is, do you feel comfortable hiring a bunch of 15-year-old and 16-year-old kids to be your waiters if you're going to deprive them of a Seder? That's a good question and a fair question. And probably the adults say, these kids, they're bums. I'm not saying what's reality. If we wouldn't have them serving us food, they would just be, who knows what they'd be doing. At least here they're hearing half the songs. I don't know what the rationale is. But
I used to work in the mountains also as a waiter and a busboy. The point is, if you ask those 15, 16-year-old kids if they want a job or rather sit in at a Seder, it's their preference, maybe, to, if they need the money, to work.
right.
So, it works both ways.
Interesting, but it's an interesting question. And back to our question, I don't suppose that the people doing the labor are Gentiles per se. I suppose he's hiring out. He has a farm, but he pays people to do the work. Most people, the economics didn't make sense to hire workers to work your field if your profit margin was so nominal, and so you had to really have vast holdings or other resources to allow you to hire people to do your dirty work. But anyways, it's interesting how different times, different places, a certain type of clothing would be a symbol, where in another society, it would mean nothing of the sort. And so, if we were to go in a time machine and we would see the Jewish people wearing the robes, I don't know, there's all different kinds of assumptions you might make, but you wouldn't necessarily assume that they were the machers of town. And then you look at the schmutz factor and the quality of and then you say, okay, these are the comfortable people. But here's a Tati's in class. Want to say hi to everybody? So I can help you in like 15, 20 minutes when I finish my class, okay? All right. Ask your Schlumberger here. Ask Schlumberger if there's something you can eat. All right, I'm going to share the screen.
Rabbi,
Yes,
so
sir, Beryl.
my question was very different. I was thinking, when it comes to folding, would we be more makel for women because of their clothing for Shabbos?
I don't suppose so. On the contrary, the women are the ones that are doing the job with precision, probably doing it with precision and properly, and as opposed to the guy just like, oh, okay, I'll put away my talis. Here, Chassi, I'm about to help you when I finish my class, okay? All right. So here the Gemara. We were talking about jumping, and we said that you shouldn't jump over a puddle that you couldn't step across. Right? We said, here, what does it mean to walk on a Shabbos way? You come to a puddle, to a stream. If you could step across it, normally you're allowed to do it. But if you have to jump, you should not do so. To which the Gemara asks the obvious question, which the obvious question is,
The obvious question is, what does the little girl want?
Kasia, I told you I'm going to help you when I finish, or you can ask me more, or Shalom to help you. I can't. Okay. Here. Yeah, I can't help you right now. But in 15 minutes, I can help you. So Maskiv Lord Rava asked the question: are you telling me that if you cannot walk across a puddle, you cannot jump across it? Well, then, hey, Chelevid, what are you going to do? You're stuck. Should you just stay there the rest of Shabbos? Or if you'll say Lakev, to go around, Kamafish Bilucha, you're causing him to walk a greater distance. Rashi, Lakev Moakam Sha'ama Kolosham, to walk all the way around the pool. You're increasing the amount of walking you're doing. Liyavor, to step into the water. Zimnin, the mistava monimat mamaya. Well, if you're walking through the water, maybe your clothing gets wet, and then you wring it out, and you could end up inadvertently doing schita, wringing out water. That's a problem. Rava says, therefore, his conclusion is if you can't walk across and you can't walk through it, you can jump across. Shapir dami ladali. You're allowed to jump when you have no choice. Rather, what is considered a un-Shabbos kind of walking? The following: Are you allowed to take a wide step? You're not even allowed to do so on the weekdays. Walking, taking a big stride could have an impact on a person's vision. But it can be restored by Kiddush on Shabbos night. Rashi says, Kiddush b'leilei Shabbos is drinking the wine of Friday night. So,
it was the day before. Yeah.
Don't eat that matzah. Go into there's a box. Go into the box. Maybe where the Pesach stuff is. Ask Shalom. Give me a few more minutes on it. It's a big waste.
Rabbi, are you
Yes.
saying that unlike the contemporary thought that drinking on Friday night blurs your vision, that we have a remedy here for making your vision clearer?
So it's interesting. There is a series of teachings that draw a correlation between the wine of Kiddush and Havdalah and eyesight. And it's a curious idea. You may notice some people on Matzah Shabbos, and I hope I'm not blurring two different ideas. You might see them dab wine on their eyes. And you'll see other people by Kiddush and by Havdalah taking a glance when they make the bracha of Boyer Piragaf and looking into the wine. And the reason is possibly connected to the correlation between wine of Kiddush and Havdalah and eyesight.
Maybe I'm sorry for interrupting.
Go ahead.
We have to parse the difference between the word eyesight and vision, because you look into a glass or you're making Havdalah, you have improving your vision, and vision doesn't have anything necessarily to do with eyesight. If you look under some of we have a vision for the world, we have a vision for importance of different philosophies. So I'm just saying it's
interesting. So I just want to show you the word that in Hebrew or in the Talmudic language, it's mimaor einav, the light of the eye. So I believe this has more to do with the ability to see, as opposed to a more important but abstract idea, which is vision, in the metaphoric sense of having a sense of what or how something should unfold or how something should be done. And sometimes that's why we say you can have a person that is seeing impaired but has a much greater vision than those who are able to see but don't know what to do with the data that their eyesight provides. And so much so, by the way, that in the Talmud, a blind person or a person that's seeing impaired is called Sagi Nahor. There is a lot of light. And the idea being that just because a person is seeing impaired, it doesn't mean that there isn't an equal or greater kind of clarity that a person could have, because the mind's eye could be more, is many times and hopefully more powerful even than the physical eye.
You have the English expression, none so blind as those that would not see.
Yeah. So, but anyways, our point here is to describe that generally speaking, a wide step shouldn't be done on Shabbos. Of course, if you have no choice, or as we brought up elsewhere, there's such a thing to run to shul, maybe there's more latitude. What do you do with the wine? What is the suggested application of the wine? So Rashi says, Kiddush. You should drink a little bit of the wine, of the Kiddush wine. And indeed, in practice, there is an effort or a point that people make to drink the wine of Kiddush, especially the Kiddush of night. That's Rashi's interpretation. Others say that it means to place it on the eye. Some even go as far as to say maybe it means to place it in the eye in a medical, as like maybe with a dropper. That's not advisable, by the way. Don't take a dropper of wine, especially that 7 people have drunk from, and think that putting it in your eye is a good idea. Probably not a good idea.
And if you do it, use white wine.
Yeah.
The alcohol, that was probably bad for your eyes also.
For starters, yeah. The Meiri writes that actually we don't even mean the Kiddush at all. We mean the peaceful environment that is introduced from Kiddush and the hopefully peaceful, serene Shabbos environment. And what it means, the Kiddush of Friday night, they mean the onset of Shabbos. In the earlier work of the Ramon, the Darkei Moshe, he quotes the Maharil, who was a famous Ashkenazic early German posek. He says that actually the healing is to look into the candles when saying Vayichulu, because the word ner times 2 equals 500. Ner is 250. 250 times 2 is 500. And we're talking about how a person could lose 1/500th of their sight. And so they should allow their eyes to be restored by looking at the fire of eyes. So the point that I'm really trying to make here is there are a variety of ways that this may or may not be interpreted, or inferred, extrapolated, or there are multiple interpretations of how to extrapolate from this Gemara into practice. Very fast, the Ben Yoyada. He says something interesting. He says that when Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi says Ani Omer, I say, it sounds like something that he came up with on his own. So it says Rabbi Yishmael had this experience in his own life because he was known to have been a little bit on the heavier side. And he particularly felt the effort that was associated with a wide step. And so he was misha'er that others too would have such a challenge. And he said, from my experience, you shouldn't do it, but I understand. So that's an interesting, what I really wanted to show you is the next menu, which says, we're getting a little sound. We're getting some sound in the background. Pardon me. He says, it's why Dafka Friday night? Why not Shabbos day? So he says at night, there are 70 letters of Vayichulu. I'm sorry, no. There are 35 words in Vayichulu, which together equal 70. We say it while making Kiddush on Yayin. Yayin is Gematria 70. To the light of 2 candles, 250, which equal 2 candles equal 500. So if 70 is Ner, and Ner is light or vision, and Yayin is 70, and Vayichulu is 70, which is Ner, which is Yayin, which is Ner. So we see that there's some connection over here between eyesight and the 500th that is lost. So this is something that's particularly available at night. This is again in his gematria kind of way. Bear with me just another moment. No. So there you have it, an interesting idea about how to preserve vision. All right. I'm going to take 4 more minutes and then I will draw this to a close. Another interesting question. I bet a question that Rebel you were not expecting to be asked over here. The same Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi, who was commenting about the impact of taking a wide step and the remedy of the Kiddush wine in whatever way you might decide or interpret that it helps. They asked him, Ma'u lechol adama b'Shabbos. Can you eat earth on Shabbos? Earth? Has anyone here ever been tempted to eat earth?
It's not a bad question during the week as well.
Oh, so the barrel, you're saying not only on Shabbos, you shouldn't eat it in the weekday too. I hear you. And as a pharmacist, I take your position on eating, taking things very seriously. So let's see, Rashi, why would anyone ever think of eating earth? So Rashi says, no. Well, Rashi infers there were certain types of earth or clay that were known to have certain medical benefits. Maybe it was to trigger some reverse peristalsis. I don't know, but whatever it was. Are you allowed to eat earth on Shabbos? Amar lei, Rabbeinu, are you ready for this? As Rabbeinu said, I have the same question in the weekday. Are you allowed to eat earth? You're not allowed to eat it in the weekday because it is detrimental for your health. So here we have a pretty emphatic assertion that on Shabbos and really never should you be eating earth, in case you were tempted.
Rabbi, I always have the same feeling. I would love to see how the Rambam handles this kind of stuff.
You're saying you'd love to see how the Rambam learns the Gemara, or how the Rambam
does he ignore it, or does he?
I don't believe there's any reference in the Rambam about eating earth. I have a feeling that there was a known remedy in the time of the Gemara that had to do with eating earth. And as we know, there are many legitimate and many illegitimate things that people do in the quest for good health. And unfortunately, many of the things that people, the Hamon Am, do without medical clearance or guidance can, instead of being beneficial for one's health, can be detrimental. And so our Gemara seems to take the position that those people that are eating earth are not necessarily onto something very wise. Let's look really fast into the into the Steinsaltz Gemara. Let's see if he has any suggestion here. Rabbi Steinsaltz says, certain types of soil contain aluminum silicate, which were used effectively as medicines to treat digestive problems related to excess acid. Alan, if I don't want to eat earth, but I want to have the effects of aluminum silicate, what do I do?
I wouldn't chew aluminum, that's for sure.
You wouldn't what?
I wouldn't chew aluminum, that's for sure.
So Alan says, don't chew aluminum.
Get the Reynolds wrap.
And don't ingest it either, you're saying.
Don't even eat pieces of earth. Even if, people eat earth when they eat mushrooms that are not cleaned, lettuce that's not cleaned,
right?
Celery that's not cleaned, carrots that are not cleaned. And the earth is full of bugs, minuscule bugs, tiny little things.
So you're saying not a great idea to eat earth on a good day?
I wouldn't.
Stay away from vegetables. No vegetables.
Clean your vegetables. Oh, just to be safe, Dr. Hammer, you're going to get a lot of popularity. Dr. Hammer says, just to be safe, don't eat any vegetables.
I'm one of the remaining carnivores in my family. We have vegetarians and vegans. So,
the doctor's going to go to his family and say, I learned in the Gemara, you're not allowed to eat vegetables.
Absolutely. I'm going to quote.
Don't worry, Bernie. Once they taste brisket, they won't be vegans anymore.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure they've okay. Let's so again, the Gemara says don't eat earth. Rabbi Allen says don't eat vegetables. To be on the safe side,
don't eat unwashed vegetables.
Okay. So you're saying that we're misrepresenting what you said. Okay,
that's right.
But it's for a good cause. Rabbi Ami says, get ready to be shocked. A person who eats earth of Bavel. It seems like there was a little bit of a problem of people eating earth because the rabbis needed to use hyperbole and very extreme techniques to convince people out of it. If you eat earth of Bavel, it's as if you're eating your ancestors' remains. Rashi says, as we know, And this is a very raw question, and it brings up many different kind of, but let's just start with what they said. Many Jews for many hundreds of years lived in Bavel, and their kivarim. So I don't know if they're being literal over here. I don't think they're being literal. I think they're trying to use some kind of an emotional appeal to keep people from eating earth. But the earth of Bavel is full of Jewish kivarim. And in between the lines, it sounds almost as if we don't quite know where those kivarim are. Maybe they were lost. Maybe Jews didn't have the right. I don't know what to make of this. I'm just telling you what Rashi says, or what the Gemara seems to be saying. We'll get back to this in a moment. Others say, if you eat the earth, you're eating essentially, as Alan says, shkatzim or ramasim, a bunch of little critters. But he says it for a different reason than Alan. He says, you know why? Because when the flood happened, and all living organic matter broke down in the flood, except for those that survived in the Teva or elsewhere. Well, we have a tradition that all of that stuff, all of that sediment and all of that decomposed stuff primarily ends up in Bavel. Why is that? I believe it had to do with the fact that Bavel was considered to be a lower level, lower the sea level than most of Israel and other places in the region. And so there was an understanding that a lot of the sediment, a lot of the broken down organic material was brought there. And so what you're eating essentially is shkatzim or musim. Now, the reality is that probably every earth has broken down material, and also you can't identify it. And halachically, if something's totally broken down, it's not really like you're eating the item. I'm sorry. When we read a little more, then we'll go back. Why is Bavel called Shinar? In Genesis and Bereshis, we describe the war and we talk about it as Shinar. All of the dead people and critters ended up floating to Bavel. Basically, that's where a lot of the remains of the people in the flood time ended up. So interesting. The Marshal makes the point which actually underscores to me more my problem. Why do we say Bavel, not Eretz Yisrael? Near the Eretz Yisrael in Lachosh. Mishum avoisav shemeisu Eretz Yisrael. Kivan de mitzayim kivareis umitarin oisam. Ein Lachosh sheyochal afar hameis. In Israel, they're very meticulous about noting the place of kivarim. They're marked off. And so no one is going to inadvertently consume earth of human remains. And then he says, basically, in Israel, there's a greater particularity to preserve the location of kivarim as opposed to in the diaspora, where it's not always possible and there wasn't as much of an effort. And it's beyond my pay grade and my style of study to consider if maybe there were different burial practices, the Jews of Bavel and the Jews of Israel. I don't know. That's something for the. But anyways, the point I believe here is we're less making a halachic case about the location of human remains and more trying to use different techniques to discourage the consumption of earth, because eating earth is bad for your health, and the rabbis had to help people imagine what they're doing. Imagine you're eating earth. You know what's in there? There could be human remains. There could be all different kinds of stuff. And they were hoping to create a psychologically undesirable environment for eating earth, which I guess you can understand. It sounds like something that maybe parents tell kids. If you eat, what do parents tell kids? All different things, right?
It's interesting because kids tend to eat earth.
Yeah. Well, maybe you should tell the kids all about the buggies in the earth, and maybe they'll stop. Anyways, my dear friends, I think this draws today's session to a close. Again, we're going to be on a brief break until after the first days of Yontif. So I want to take this opportunity to wish a kosher, freilich, and Pesach, a kosher and joyous Pesach, a zisen Pesach. And for those that are with family, enjoy the family. For those that are with friends, enjoy the friends. And the main thing is it should be a happy and a healthy. And we should have only good news for Am Yisrael, for Klal Yisrael, in Israel and abroad. And should truly be Zman Chayreseinu, a time that we are alleviated from all the different matters that concern, perturb, and bother us individually and as a community. We should only have good news and healthy news and happy news. And again, thank you for making the time to join us today for our journey.
Don't knock off too fast. Is the professor still there?
So here's what I'm going to do. Hold on. Here's what I'm going to do because I need to go, but I'm going to leave the class on. So I'm going to make Mark the admin. And that way the shmooze can continue as long as is desired without me having to make everybody have to get off. Kosher Freitag and Pesach. Thank you.